Hey guys, one second. Yeah. Sorry about that. Couldn't wait. Okay guys, I had a really bad day, and on top of that, now I can't sleep, as you can tell by my glorious appearance. By the way, I'm the Geek. Sure I forgot to tell you that. And in my ability to be unable to sleep, if you can call that an ability, I was messing around on YouTube, and I found this series of videos where a guy was basically defending crummy movies. It felt like something out of Mystery Science Theater personally, because a lot of those crappy movies that they watched over the years were movies they actually enjoyed. And if you met them, they would tell you which ones some of them were, but we're not here for that. Right now we're here for my personal opinions, my own opinions, no one else's. If you share my opinion, that's awesome, but you can't get mad at me if you disagree with me. This is my top 10 list of movies that people hated, and I'm going to try to defend. It's a horrible title. Maybe I'll have something better written up when this video is done. So, oh, and these are in no specific order. I really don't feel like placing them from best to worst because I'm tired, so we're not going to worry about that. Number 10 is, if you know me, you know this movie's going to be on the list. Masters of the Universe. 1987, I want to say? Dolph Lundgren, Frank Langella, Courtney Cox, what's the other guy's name? I don't know. The guy who played Tom Paris in Voyager is in this. Anyway, here was the problem with this film. The biggest complaint people had was, where's Orko? Orko's not in it, which in my youth I was right there with. When I got the DVD, I watched the commentary because I love commentaries. The director was being stretched very thin the entire production. Canon, the film company, was supposed to pay up half, and Mattel was supposed to pay up half of the pay for the film. And Canon's like, okay, you put up the first half. And they burned through that, and Mattel's like, okay, Canon, now put up your half. And like, yeah, about that. We're broke. We're going bankrupt. So, there's that. There's the fact that Mattel is basically saying, oh, you can do this, you can't do that. There's the fact that they kept getting told that they were cutting the film, they were ending, no more filming right there, and all this stuff. Those are the reasons it was bad. And honestly, in defending these films, there's always going to be problems that are undefendable. But I'm trying the best I can with what I got. Good things about this film. With what they had to work with, it is beautiful. One of the biggest rules in He-Man lore, at least back in the day, I really wish this was still a rule, He-Man can't kill anybody. That's why Skeletor had all these stormtroopers. They're literally meant to be a type of robot, so He-Man could go nuts and beat the crap out of people. That way, he's not hurting anyone. They're robots. Yay, Filmation, for putting that in. If you want to watch this movie for any one reason, it's Frank Langella as Skeletor. This guy, if I were to be an actor, I would try to play every villain like he played Skeletor. The movie was almost for Skeletor. And another big problem people have with this movie is that, why is it on Earth? We want to see Eternia. They had no money. No money. When they filmed, they had to figure out the best ways to save cost. How do you save cost? By not building a lot of sets. By filming on Earth. So, yeah, you're going to get what you pay for that. Moving on. Number 9. Super Mario Brothers. This one's kind of tough. Bob Hoskins, John Leguizamo, Dennis Hopper. I like this movie, and here's why. You have to leave your love for the games at the door. When you go into a movie, you have to tell yourself, this is a movie, this is not the exact same thing we've seen growing up in whatever other form. You have to go into this specific movie thinking to yourself, it just happens to be called Super Mario Brothers. Watch it without trying to connect it to the games, and it's very entertaining. I love every minute of this movie. I really got nothing else to say. There's a specific scene in this movie that I try to place into video game nostalgia. There's a scene where Dennis Hopper basically takes a repainted Super Scope, which was the big old gun peripheral for the Super Nintendo, and shot a dude with it, and it turned him into a monkey. And I choose to believe that was a nod to Donkey Kong. I have no basis on this. That's what I choose to believe, and it makes the movie a whole lot funnier to me. Before I get to number 8, I want to check something. Out of all these movies, this is definitely the best. It's got a cult following. I think that people hated it back in the day because it's meant to be a children's film and it's pretty dark, if you choose to take it that way. And that is Return to Oz, starring Faruqa Bulk, if I'm pronouncing that right. This was her first film. This was back when she was adorable. She grew up, and I gotta admit, I'm not attracted. But I love this movie. I remember being a kid watching this movie, and there are parts that scared me, but not enough to make me go, oh my god, turn it off, I gotta run away. This scared me just enough where I wasn't afraid to turn it off. And mostly that was because of the Wheelers. And maybe the gnomes at the end. Spoiler alert. But, it's a great film. The characters in this film, it feels almost like an homage to the original film, while throwing out all that Munchkin and musical crap. If you need one reason to watch this movie, honestly, in my opinion, Jack Skellington. No, not Jack Skellington. Dear God. Jack Pumpkinhead. Which, honestly, I feel may have inspired Jack Skellington. In my personal opinion, this is a much more entertaining character, but I'm not a fan of musicals, so that might have something to do with it. Number 7, Fat Albert. I really don't know how to defend this movie, but it's kind of like Mario. You have to separate the show from the movie. And that's kind of hard to do because this is one of the most literal interpretations of a film I've ever seen. The story is that the cartoon characters actually come out of the cartoon and start living in the real world. And honestly, that's the kind of film I remember wanting to see as a kid. Like, how many times would you sit at home as a kid thinking, man, how would this work if it were a real movie? And to me personally, 90% of the time, it's like the characters just jump out and come to life. And this is the closest I've ever seen to a child's fantasy coming true. But what I love about this movie is it involves a cartoon. I hate the new animation, by the way. I wish they would have stuck with the old Filmation animation. But they come out of the cartoon and help characters that may or may not really exist, including the real Bill Cosby's in this. And what I love about it most is I'm a fan of Bill Cosby's stand-up, and through this movie, Bill Cosby tells a small bit of story about the real Fat Albert. Fat Albert was a real person, and he was based on stories about Bill Cosby and his friends growing up. There was a real Weird Harold. There was a real Dumb Donald. I think Bill, the cartoon character, was a young version of Bill Cosby. There was a kid named Rudy. Bill Cosby had a brother named Rudy, and that's what I love most about this. There's this beautiful scene at the end, just before the credits, where Fat Albert's gone, they're all back on the cartoon, and Bill Cosby visits a grave, and all his friends from when he kids are there, and they show little moments of telling you who these characters were in connection to the cartoon, and this scene brought me to tears. And if you don't know enough about Bill Cosby's history, you gotta give it a second look. Enough of the sadness there, let's get to something different. Number 6? 10, 9, 8, yeah, 6. Silent Hill. Honestly, there's not much to defend here. This is for what it is, it's a pretty good movie. And honestly, I haven't heard any real complaints on it. Granted, I haven't really looked. It just feels like something people would bitch about. And the one complaint I have, well, I suppose there's 2 complaints. One of which I can't give away because it's a spoiler. The other one, which is a much bigger one, is they changed the main antagonist from a man to a woman. Now, I'm all for equal rights and power to the women's movement and all that, but sometimes people go too far. I mean, Silent Hill 3 had a female antagonist, awesome. I stopped playing the games after that, so I don't know after that. This just feels like they're trying to push too hard to show that women can do everything men can do. That's awesome, and they can. It just felt like they surgically removed the main character and added a woman character in his place, and it just physically hurt me in a way, if that makes sense. As much as a movie can hurt you, I guess. Okay, number 5, Daredevil. Now, the only defense I can do for this movie... Alright, one big problem that I do agree with everyone is the CG is terrible. There's no defending that. The only defense I can really give to this movie is you can't watch the original cut. You have to go to the director's cut, because there's this whole B-plot about Coolio, or character played by Coolio, I think. There's this B court thing where he's been framed for murder, and he's a junkie, he's definitely a criminal, but he's been wrongfully accused of this specific crime. And that crime brings Foggy Nelson, Daredevil's lawyer sidekick kinda, all the way up to the guy working for the Kingpin, and he tries to make a plea agreement by ratting out the Kingpin. If you watch the original movie, suddenly the cops know who the Kingpin is. Like, what? When did that happen? Watch this movie, you find out how it happens. Other than that, there's really nothing more I can say about it. So moving on. This one, I can and can't defend at the same time. And I think my copy's a little beat up. Oh, actually, it looks pretty good. I should watch this. But number 4, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. And I can just feel you guys cringing at home. Yeah, it's a sequel to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. It's really a continuation of the series, piecing together the 4th and 5th seasons of the series between Zeo and Turbo. This is a movie that really, the worst part about it is there's a couple of plot holes. Like, they changed their powers from Zeo to Turbo, and there's really no explanation as to that. But there's no CG in it. They actually use a guy in a robe, in a costume, as the Megazord and all that. And I think the biggest problem people have is, like, there's a sense of logic left at the door. A big problem I had was, like, there's an actual kid as a Power Ranger. That was hard to digest. You have to take it at what it's worth. It's a kid's film. It's gonna leave reality at the door, and you just have to distance yourself from that and try to enjoy it as a film. Not a good film, but a film. Number 3, Digimon Digital Monsters, the movie. This movie is actually 3 short movies pieced together with some narrative in an attempt to make a film out of it. And the only way I can really defend this is by saying, like, the biggest problem with this is that the writers of this film were limited by the footage they had from Japan. They can't just make more animation, and they have to work with what they've got, and they didn't have much to work with. Like, there's all new Digimon in here that never showed up in the cartoon, and honestly, if you do research on these characters now, these digital evolutions really don't even fit. But it's entertaining. Again, if you leave logic at the door, you might enjoy it if you're an anime guy. These next 2, I really don't know which one is better or worse depending on how you look at this list, so we'll go with the obvious one. Number 2 is Howard the Duck. This is another movie where you have to separate everything you've seen from the movie itself. They had to take a comic book character in the 80s and to develop it for film. If you read the original series, it went up to, I think, issue 31 and stopped, and then they had a magazine, which I never got to read. But then suddenly, just before the movie came out, they got 2 more issues, which felt like a real departure from the rest of the comic series. And then you go and watch this, it is much different. In the comics, Howard just appeared through a dimensional door or something, and keeping in mind this is comic book logic, weird stuff like that happens every day. This one, they try to explain how he got there. There's never been an explanation how Howard got there to Earth, as far as I know. I might have missed something in, like, recent years. But in this movie, the whole story is about him trying to get back home. Like I said, it's a different story. I think the biggest problem people had with this movie is Howard did not look real. It's 1987? 86. He's not gonna look real, but if you, again, give it a little leeway, I always thought it looked real. I had no idea how he pulled off Howard. I didn't know until this DVD came out and there were special features. And if that's not enough to watch it for Leah Thompson. She's hot. And the last one, and this is another kiddie film, but honestly I think adults will like it if they give it a try. And don't laugh at me. Care Bears the movie. This one and Care Bears movie 2, I think it's called The New Generation. They both fit in this genre, but this one's a little bit more so. If you sit and watch these movies, there's some dark in these movies. I remember trying to sit down and get my niece and nephew to watch these movies with me. Halfway through, they're like, okay, I can't watch anymore. I'm gonna go play with the Play-Doh or something. And yeah, they couldn't do it. It just boggled my mind. Like, this is Care Bears. You're getting scared from Care Bears? And I sat down and just watched it by myself, and I'm like, whoa, you're not, yeah. This is a little dark. I like that because it gives it depth, it gives it story, it gives the movie character. Not to mention the fact that Mickey Rooney has a cameo in it, kinda, like as a voice actor, obviously. And what I love most about this movie, even more than the darkness, even more than the story structure, there are 2 or 3 kids in this movie throughout the film. You unofficially see what happened to them. 2 of these kids grew up and got married, basically. And that's never officially confirmed, but if you look at it closely, yeah, Mickey Rooney is the kid in this story. That made me tear up just a little bit, just to see, like, or how many shows do you know growing up about cartoon characters meeting little kids? I can think of a handful, like the original My Little Pony, I think, did that. Rainbow Bright did that. The Ewoks did that, sort of. How many of these stories have you ever seen where you got to see the kid telling the story to his kids? That's the kind of continuity or old school storytelling I really miss, and I feel like television and movies are lacking today. Well, that is my list. I am tired. I'm going to bed. Let's see if my cat will let me sleep. What do you think, Riel? Can I go to bed?